Hello guys, welcome back for another video on FIFA, and this time we're gonna make the new video on the FIFA Road to Expertise series pretty much. And it's been a while since I last made my video, the third video I believe, on FIFA, and I was talking about tactics, and we already had 3 episodes. This is the fourth one. But it looks like a lot of people are interested, and especially the player attributes one is being quite popular at the moment. So I thought, why not create some new ones and explain some more things about FIFA, and since people like it a lot. And in before we start, I have to thank you for your support. Hopefully we will approach 300 subscribers soon. But if you haven't done so, please remember to subscribe and especially like the video, because that will get it in front of the eyes of more people. So and again, thanks for the support. So in this one, we're gonna be talking about individual player instructions. So this is how you select them. Obviously, it's like the triangle on a PlayStation, and you just go here and select the player instructions. And I'm currently using my FAT team to describe how individual player instructions work. And let's start off with the defenders. And you kind of have to always remember that player instructions have a lot to do with the actual player that you instruct. So I can give you some ideas and how you can go through this with your team, but it doesn't have to be, and it shouldn't be the same as with my team, for example, or similar to my suggestions. It really depends on what kind of players you're using. If they're pacey, if they're strong, if they're good in headers, if they're good in shooting, if they're fast, like pacey, as I said. And I'm gonna explain what I mean by that. But let's start off with the back line. And let's start off with the left back, for example. The left back is presented with two options here, and the first one being the attacking runs, which has three selections: always overlap, balanced attack, and stay back while attacking. Obviously, balanced attack is a default, and it's a little bit of both. You know, your defender, your left back, will also join the attack, but also stay back. It's a little bit random. It always depends on your instructions as well. Like for example, if you ask for your player to move forward, they will. But if you use stay back while attacking, this will make it sure that your left back will actually not try to overlap and join the attack when you're attacking. And you may think, why wouldn't you want your left back to join the attack? Isn't it like a good idea to have your back line also, especially the left and the right back, join the attack as well, so that you have more options? And yeah, that may be good if you are dominating play, if you are especially good and you are much better than your opponent, and you don't have a lot to fear from your opponent, so your opponent's attacking formation or the way they attack is actually bad, and they don't reach your box often. So in this case, you may not want to have your left and right backs stay back while attacking. But if you're playing against good players, and especially if you're playing against, let's say, the legendary AI on the squad battles, having backs that stay back while you're attacking can actually save you from conceding a goal on a counter attack. So it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. And always overlap means that overlap is a thing in football, which means that a player actually passes to another player, and immediately they join the attack and try to overlap that player. So let's picture the situation like, for example, Rose here trying to pass to Mata, for example, with a 1-2 pass, and immediately, oops, I don't know what happens. So he passes to Mata here, and immediately Rose takes a run forward, attempting to get the ball back at his feet. So he actually overlaps Mata and joins the attack. So that's what it means. And again, if you have a pacey attacker with good stamina, pacey defender, sorry, with a good stamina, you may want them to always overlap. And if you do decide to do so, I would recommend that you don't have both of your backs pretty much always overlapping. Just have one of those, and maybe even switch at times. But having both of them always overlapping can be a little bit tricky, and you can have your your whole defensive line exposed because of that. In terms of interceptions, normally interceptions is the way it's the default. So your defenders will be a little bit conservative, will be a little bit aggressive. It's going to be a combination. But if we're talking about aggressive interceptions here, this means that your player will play in a style that will try to play close to the attacker, will try to man mark the player and be aggressive with the way they intercept. So it could potentially also lead to more fouls, for example. And that also gets governed by the way you have set up your team instructions. And we have a separate video. We had a separate video on that, right? And hopefully you have watched that. If you haven't, it's in the same playlist as this video, so you can go watch that later. But conservative interceptions, it's a little bit about your defender being more careful and try to play in a more zonal type of attack. Where he's actually trying to cut the defender by cut the opponent's offense by actually letting them make the mistake instead of actively getting the ball from the attacker. So moving on to the center backs, attacking support is the first option here, and I would recommend that you are super careful with these. Personally, I never switch my center backs player instructions. If you do decide to do so, be extra careful because this can really leave your defense empty, especially in counterattacks. But in case you have, for example, a very strong, very good, very pacey center back that you could potentially utilize in the offense, good at headers, good at shooting, for example, maybe something like Ramos, potentially. Potentially, yeah. So maybe you want them to join the attack, and this can be very tricky, and I would recommend that you stay away from. Play a striker. I mean, that's I don't even know why this option exists here. I would never recommend that your defenders are actually playing like as strikers. I mean, it's pretty obvious what it does. I mean, your defenders will actually join the attack as try to play as strikers. And if you're super dominating the attack, you may want to do it, but otherwise, I'd just shy off from this one. And similarly, I was saying with interceptions, we have already discussed. And pretty much everything is the same here with the right back as well. Moving on to the center line, to the midfield. Let's start with Mara here. And attacking support, balanced attack is the default one. But the other option is stay back while attacking. And this means that your Mata here, for example, will actually try to play a little bit more like a defensive midfielder. He will stay back, or a midfielder. He will stay back while your team is attacking, and he won't actually try to join the attackers inside the box or roam around the box. He will actually pretty much stay back while you're attacking, and he will not actually support the offense, your attack. And by get forward is actually the exact opposite. He will immediately try to join the attack. And again, this has to do with the opponent as well and the player that you're using. So in this case, let's talk about Mata. So for example, Mata is not like the fastest player in the world, right? So if you decide to have him support the attack and get forward all the time, you will see that it's gonna be tough for him to actually come back and defend if you lose the ball. In that case, you need to have either a very good defensive midfielder or a very pacey left back, for example, so that he can cover up for Mara's inability to quickly come back to defend. So it's in the end, it's a matter of how did you design your overall player support. But yeah, that's what it does really. In terms of crosses, and that's support on crosses. It always starts with default again, which is like a balanced crossing run. But if you want to have Mata get into the box for a cross, this means that he's gonna be in a position where he can get a header, for example. So he can try to actively win a header and score with this score this way. Or stay on edge of box for cross. This would actually mean that he will stay on the edge of the box, and he will try to get the ball and finish by shooting. And now this is important because if you take a look at Mata's stats, for example, and go to his attribute details, you will see that his heading accuracy is 59 here, which is really, really bad. And his long shots is 70, which is better. So if you really wanted Mata to participate in a corner situation, for example, the best option here would definitely be not to have him get into the box for the cross, because his headers are awful, but stay on edge of box for cross. So his shooting is better. So he will gain from that. And actually, I'm not sure if I was looking at the long shots. Let me see, maybe I made a mistake. But yeah, long shots 70. Yeah, because if we're talking about out of remember that shoots out of the box is the long shot attribute. Shoots inside the box is the finishing attribute. So his finishing is 79 is even better if he shoots from inside the box, but outside the box is 70. So let's go back to the player instructions. Moving on, the next one, is the normal interceptions. We talked about the interceptions. It's pretty much the same for every player. And positioning freedom, stick to position is it's the default, which means that your player will effectively try to be a CAM in this case. If we're talking about Mata. He's always going to be a CAM, right? So he's gonna play as a center attacking midfielder. Sorry, as a CM in this case, because I have him in the CM position. His position is a CAM, but his best position. But if you free roam the player, this will mean that he will get the chance to try to be closer to the ball and leave his CM position, and so at times become a CAM, for example, or even he could even be a right midfielder if play actually comes on the right wing, for example. So generally, I would recommend that if you want to use the free roam option, use it with a player that's pretty pacey, so that he can quickly go back to his original position, and also use it if you have a lot of good support around him. So if he actually misses his, takes a position that actually leaves a lot of space behind, you have other players to compensate for that. That's a way to think about it. And also, generally speaking, you want a little bit of an agile player to be free roaming. Think about it like a Messi type of player, who is like a great option for a free roamer. Someone who has a lot of fantasy also in the way they play is generally considered as a good free roamer. So we talked about attacking support on crosses, interceptions, and positioning freedom. Yeah, we talked about all these. So let's go to the center attacking midfielder here. So that his defensive support has three options: the default one, obviously, and then stay forward and come back on defense. And it's pretty obvious, I believe, whenever the opponent is attacking, your opponent is attacking, this will mean that your center attacking midfielder will actually come back on defense, and he would actually drop back deeply on your defense, like below your midfield line. Otherwise, he will actually stay forward so that you can counter attack faster, for example. And now, this also has to do with the fact of how much stamina your player has, so you don't want them to move up and down all the time. So think about it, if you have like an Henry type of player who is not like the best, the best player in terms of stamina, you don't want him to come back all the time and get the ball and then move back in the offense again and do all these runs all the time. And also, he may not be a good defender. I mean, if we're talking about a player whose defensive skills are not so good, you may not want him to join your defense, because it's a little bit of a waste, really, right? So it's relative to how your player, what your player actually is, and how good they are with defense. So support on crosses we talked about. This is the same thing. Positioning freedom is exactly the same thing, and interceptions again the same thing. And let's go to strikers now. Support runs, two options apart from the default, which is a balanced type of support. Stay central or drift wide. So what does this mean? So for your strikers generally play in two ways. They try to either stay central, close to the box, close to your center backs, or actually drift a little bit wider So that's the other options, drift wide. Drift a little bit wider so that they go either on the left side or the right side, if I may say that, the more right or the more left side. So in between your like the opponent's left back or center back. So they're kind of drifting a little bit wide in order to get the ball, for example, and then try to pass it or cross. Or so they play more like I would say like a winger type of, winger striker sort of. It's always a matter of how you want to play. I kind of prefer to have like a balanced type of width in most situations. For attacking runs, that's super interesting here, and that's a very useful thing to know if you don't know about it so far. Attacking runs super important, especially when you're playing against good players or against the AI in Legendary. I almost always go for getting behind, especially if I'm using pacey players, because I want my strikers to try to get back the opponent's defensive line in order to have a lot of open space. And so with picking this option, your striker will actually try to come in between the center backs and kind of come in a one-on-one with across against the keeper. That's the intended thing to do. It won't always happen, of course, and there may be offside traps and generally offsides, but that's the idea. And again, pacey helps. And if you're playing with players that try to press high up the pitch, which the AI does all the time, pretty much, especially in Legendary, getting behind, I think it's a great option. So the next one is a balanced attack, obviously, and the target man. With a target man kind of play, you're looking to have players in the style of Benzema, for example, where he's a stronger player and a taller player. Maybe you could think about it as Lewandowski also, for example, where they're not like super pacey, although Lewandowski is better, I believe, in terms of pace. But Benzema, for example, is not like super pacey, but he's really strong. He's a beast pretty much. So you can think about like a beast type of player. So being a target man and a player who likes to play on with his back, pretty much being not facing the opponent's keeper, but pretty much play on his back and try to hold on to the ball while his other players, his teammates support him, for example, and he tries to score with headers and taking good positions inside the box, because he's stronger than the other defenders. So this is the idea behind the target man. So, and the next one is a false 9. And a false 9 is pretty much, so 9 in football is like a central attacking midfielder. It's like this position here. And the idea is that you're looking for your striker to kind of become a CAM instead of a striker. So he's gonna be dropping a little bit back in your midfield in order to act as a central attacking midfielder instead of as a striker. And that's why we call them a false 9. They are not really a 9, but they play like a 9. So this is something that you could use. And if you have a striker that's more like an attacking midfielder and he has the virtues of an attacking midfielder or a playmaker sort of, you could try to use the system. I haven't myself tried it many times, but that's what the idea behind it is. So we talked about the attacking runs. I kind of prefer to use the getting behind for the most part. Interception is the same thing that we discussed about, and defensive pressing with your strikers is pressing back line or cut passing lanes. Kind of obvious. Press back line means that your striker will actually try to man mark the player who has the ball and try to press them directly. And if you use cut passing lines, they will actually try to cut the pass that the defender makes and not directly defend against a player per se. It's like directly pretty much trying to cut the pass and not directly the player, get the ball from the player directly. And I would recommend cut passing lanes if you're playing with better players. because if you play with good players, they will pass before you actually even reach them. So if you try to press back to press their line, place like man mark the players, they will be good at it, and you will have a tough time getting the ball. So it's a waste. But if you're playing against good players, I would probably go for cut passing lanes or just use the basic defense support if you don't really want your strikers to to be very pushy and press high and all that. So yeah, that's what it is with the player instructions. Hopefully that gives you an idea. And always remember that everything has to do with your players and your individual players. You really have to know the attributes of your players, their acceleration, their sprint speed, their pace, pretty much. You have to know their shooting attributes. You have to know how good they are with crosses, how good they are with their defending, so if it actually makes sense to press or if it's a waste. How good they are with their headers, for example. So does it make sense for them to be a target man? Does it make sense for them to support a cross inside the box? And then you can go ahead and build your individual player skills based on these ideas, and have them as refined as possible based on that. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I have to thank you for watching, and as I mentioned before, please remember to like and subscribe, and you will see the end video that actually will mention the same. But thanks again, and I'll see you soon with more videos on FIFA. Thank you for watching, guys. Please remember to like the video and subscribe. This will help me with creating more and more videos and tutorials about FIFA 18. Make sure that you have a fantastic day, and I'll see you next time. Bye!